Controversy in Southlake tonight after teens posted a racist video.
It was a wealthy, idyllic town, forced to confront racism.
My children were told Rosa Parks is dead. You all have to sit in the back of the bus.
But when the school board presented its plan, this small-town fight ignited a national firestorm.
Critical race theory.
Racism in reverse.
False narrative of rampant racism.
Shame.
This is Southlake, an NBC News podcast. All episodes available now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Brian Laundrie's family issues a brand new statement about their missing son. Plus, fired for refusing the vaccine? Deadlines and lawsuits loom. I'm Shepard Smith. This is the news on CNBC. Vaccine mandates put to the test in New York. Deadline day for healthcare workers to get the first dose, but tens of thousands have not. The plan if workers get fired, plus the lawsuits.
I'm about to get my booster shot and do it publicly.
Booster shots into arms. The CDC director joins us to answer why things are off to such a confusing start. The massive manhunt for Gabby Petito's boyfriend officially scaling down. The investigation's new phase and why the FBI took DNA samples from Brian Laundrie's home. R. Kelly learns his fate.
Mr. Kelly didn't say much of anything because he was shot.
Accused of sex trafficking, of recruiting and grooming underage girls and boys for his own perverse whims. Now the R&B superstar hears the jury's verdict. Investigating Amtrak's deadly derailment. Ford makes a massive bet on electric cars and trucks. And Facebook puts the brakes on Instagram for kids.
Live from CNBC, the facts, the truth, the news with Shepard Smith.
Good evening. Just into the CNBC newsroom, New York City can move forward with its vaccine mandate for nearly all adults working in public schools, the largest in the nation. A federal appeals court, or panel I should say, issued the ruling within just the last hour. This is a major reversal that comes after a judge decided to temporarily block New York from enforcing the requirement. It's unclear, really, whether city officials will implement the mandate tonight at midnight as they originally scheduled, or wait until later this week. The fight continues. Broader vaccine mandates are also being put to the test right now. New York State gave healthcare workers two options: get vaccinated or lose your job. And it appears some have opted for the latter. A number of hospitals and nursing homes started removing employees today for failing to meet that deadline to get a first dose. As a result, Governor Kathy Hochul of New York preparing contingency plans for possible staff shortages. She says she's ready to call in medically trained National Guard members to help fill any major gaps. The mandate applies not just to doctors and nurses, but also to other healthcare employees, including food service workers, security guards, and custodians. New York's vaccine requirement serves as an early example of how similar employee mandates could play out all across America. So far, at least 2 lawsuits have been filed against the state of New York, challenging the legality of the rules. In a moment, we'll hear from the head of the CDC, Dr. Rochelle Walensky. First, CNBC's Valerie Castro outside a hospital in New York City. Val, what are you hearing from healthcare workers there?
Well, Shep, many are on board, but some are still refusing. Tonight, we're in front of Bellevue Hospital. This is one of the oldest hospitals in New York City and part of the city's public health care system that says more than 90% of doctors and nurses have at least 1 dose and are in compliance with the state mandate that went into effect today. October 7th is the next big deadline. That is when staff at other medical facilities like home care, hospice, and adult care in New York State should receive at least that first dose. The Department of Labor says any workers who are terminated for refusing to get vaccinated are not eligible for unemployment insurance unless they have a medical exemption approved by a doctor. The CEO of New York City Health and Hospitals, the largest public health care system in the country, including Bellevue Hospital, says more than 95% of nurses and about 98% of doctors are vaccinated as of today. But about 5,000 employees out of a total of 43,000 are not vaccinated as of Monday morning.
Even today, we are not putting people on leave. If people are not vaccinated, they're not going to get paid for today. But we're keeping lines of communication open, and we're hoping that if not today, then by tomorrow, people will go and get vaccinated and resume their posts.
Northwell Health, the largest healthcare system in New York State, says they've seen nearly 100% compliance system-wide, though not everyone is happy to be a part of that statistic, and some are still refusing to get vaccinated.
We were forced to take the shot or resign. That was our choice.
And what did you choose?
I chose to get the COVID shot because I need my job.
I'm not taking that vaccine. It's more like it's either a paycheck or my rates.
And New York State Governor Kathy Hochul says there are plans to bring in healthcare workers from other states, if not other countries, if there is any sort of staffing shortage. And she says she won't hesitate to issue an emergency order that would bring in help from the National Guard. Shep.
Valerie, thanks. The president got his COVID booster shot at the White House today. CDC endorsed an extra dose of Pfizer's vaccine for certain high-risk groups.
Boosters are important, but the most important thing we need to do is get more people vaccinated. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. That's why I'm moving forward with vaccination requirements wherever I can.
President Biden joins more than 2.6 million Americans who've received a booster shot thus far. At 78 years old, the president qualified for a third dose under the CDC's new guidance. The agency approved boosters for people 65 and older, certain adults with underlying health conditions, and frontline workers, including teachers, nurses, and grocery store workers. Dr. Rochelle Walensky now, director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Doctor, thanks so much for being here. Who, if you could help us, who should get a booster shot is really not clear to everybody. For instance, in West Virginia, the governor says anyone older than 18 should get one. Other states are restricting them to those who are over, for instance, age 75. After months of criticism, why is it that the government is still unable to deliver one clear, unified message on what Americans should do?
Good evening, Shepard. Thanks so much for having me. So first, I want to be clear, and we're going to talk about boosters in just a second, but one of our key priorities right now is to make sure that the 70 million people who haven't yet been vaccinated get vaccinated, because those are the people who are at high risk of being hospitalized and dying from COVID-19 right now. But as we move and talk about boosters, this was an important first step. Our first step was looking at people who received the Pfizer vaccine as their primary series, and they are now more than 6 months after their second shot. So if that is you, you're eligible for a booster if you're over the age of 65, if you have an underlying condition that puts you at high risk of severe disease, and if you work or live in a place that puts you at high risk of exposure. So let's unpack that a little bit. If you're at high risk of severe disease, those are people who have underlying conditions like asthma, diabetes, underlying heart disease, obesity. And then people who are at high risk by virtue of where they work, these are people like our frontline healthcare workers, our teachers, our transportation workers, our grocery workers, our frontline workers. So those are the groups who are eligible for a boost right now.
Doctor, you told The Atlantic today that you plan to get a booster yourself, but you want to make sure those who are at higher risk get them first. And at the same time, the administration has promised there are plenty of shots for boosters or whatever else. So why are you concerned about supply?
I'm not at all concerned about supply. I do know that there have been some queues in the pharmacies as people have been wanting to get their boost right away. So I merely indicated that I didn't want to sort of be in a rush above those who are over the age of 65, who might be more at risk than I am. And I'll wait a week or two, and I will absolutely get mine.
You know, a lot of us still wear masks all the time. We're around our friends because our friends have little kids who can't get vaccinated. And for months we've been hearing an approved vaccine for children aged 5 to 11 is coming. Still hasn't happened. Should that process have been, fast-tracked or sped up in some way?
So, there is this important balance, and this is such a key question, and we're addressing it with urgency. On the one hand, we want to have a vaccine for these children as soon as possible. On the other hand, we absolutely want to do the due diligence of the clinical trials, of the scientific review, to make sure when those vaccines are delivered to our children that they are safe and effective. We heard just over the weekend that we anticipate to see the data to the FDA, I hope within days. The FDA will absolutely be addressing those data with urgency, and as soon as they give their authorization, if that's what they choose to do, and we expect that they will, then the CDC will absolutely be giving its recommendations soon thereafter that.
I know it's also complicated, but no matter what happens there, it still leaves a lot of really little kids, and it still leaves a lot of elderly people and underlying condition people who we're all, if we're not crazy, concerned about, and that means there are masks here and there and everywhere. Are masks with us for a long, long time, years, forever?
Well, I think the really important thing to emphasize here is the best way you can protect people with underlying conditions, immunosuppression, and people who are unable to get vaccinated is to get vaccines yourself, to surround them by people who are vaccinated, which puts them at much lower risk of disease. What we do know right now from the Delta variant is for people who have had 2 doses of the vaccine, they still need to wear their masks in the rare case that they might be a breakthrough infection. We absolutely are having studies that are starting now so that we can assess if after your booster shot, if you were to get a breakthrough infection, whether you can still transmit. Our hope is no, and we'll absolutely be doing those studies. Once we have those studies, I do hope that with disease transmission coming down, community transmission coming down, we will one day be able to get rid of those masks.
We all hope. Dr. Walensky, thank you. R. Kelly is going to prison. The question is, for how long? A jury today convicted the R&B star on all counts, all 9 of the racketeering and sex trafficking charges against him. They found R. Kelly guilty of being the ringleader of a decades-long scheme to recruit and groom women, underage girls, and boys to sexually exploit them for his own benefit. Prosecutors argued during a 6-week trial that he used his fame and his money to lure his victims, then control their lives, forcing them to have sex with him, even that he knowingly gave them herpes. The jury deliberated for less than 10 hours total, 4 on Friday, 5 plus today. His sentencing set for May the 4th. He could get up to life in prison. David Henderson now, civil rights attorney, CNBC contributor. David, as a special crimes prosecutor, you prosecuted cases similar to this one over and over. Explain why racketeering here and what it means as a conviction.
Shep, having prosecuted these, they're very difficult cases to win when you only have one victim during the trial, because juries always find a way to second guess people. The advantage of trying it as a racketeering charge is you're saying it's a criminal enterprise where Kelly was promoting his music and his brand to exploit people. So the jury got to hear from 11 different people and 45 total witnesses for crimes spanning 3 decades.
R. Kelly could be facing, it looks to me like, up to 140 years in prison. How does sentencing for something like this typically play out?
Well, Shep, it's hard to say because you don't see cases like this one very often. I would say if this were the only case, he'd be looking at enough time to probably keep him behind bars for the rest of his life. But you have to remember, there are 2 more cases coming after this one. Another federal suit and a state court suit in Illinois. When you combine those 3, the likelihood of him seeing daylight again, almost non-existent.
But what about an appeal? Does he have grounds? Is there a case?
Shep, the rule is when the feds come after you, they've pretty much already got you. And so just watching the way this trial was handled, I think it's locked up pretty tight. And even if it wasn't, you can dodge 1 silver bullet. Nobody dodges 3. So I don't think an appeal is likely. But if one did succeed, they still got 2 more shots. R.
Kelly, guilty on all counts. David Henderson, thank you. Minutes before the start of a San Diego Padres game, a tragedy at the ballpark. A mother and her 2-year-old killed when they fell from an upper deck of the stadium. But now police are calling it suspicious. A college student missing in Orlando. The person of interest in the case found dead. Now police asking for the public's help to piece together what happened. And TikTok hits a major milestone. But presidents and entire countries are trying to block people from even using the thing. What next for TikTok?
Worldwide Exchange is now a podcast. I'm Brian Sullivan. Join me as we hit the biggest money stories from around the world, breaking down the risks and rewards of global trade, the news you need to know with real-world actionable advice, and even a little fun and unique content you won't get anywhere else, like the most random but interesting thing you'll hear all day. Subscribe to the Worldwide Exchange podcast today.
Cops in San Diego are investigating that tragic event at a Padres game that happened Saturday afternoon. Authorities say a mother and her 2-year-old son fell from the 3rd level of Petco Park. That's about 6 stories. They died instantly. Investigators say it's too early to know for sure whether the fall was accidental or intentional, but they do concede it, quoting now, appeared to be suspicious. Local coverage now from NBC7 San Diego and their reporter Kelvin Henry outside Petco Park. Kelvin?
And now, yes, and it is simply just a tragic story, Shep, and you can actually just take a look and you can see exactly where it happened at that concession stand right above us. And now I spoke with the medical examiner's office who told me that SDPD has sealed the case and asked them to continue to keep it sealed until further notice. Now, investigators are calling it suspicious, and it remains unclear if it was accidental or intentional at this time. Now, according to police, the fall happened just before 4 Saturday afternoon near the corner of L Street and Tony Gwynn Drive. And now the memorial that you see on your screen stands there in honor of the 2 victims. And now we reached out to SDPD, in which they told us the homicide unit is on the case, and investigators say it's still an ongoing matter. And now police are in contact with the child's father as they look into the incident, and the victims have not been identified by investigators, but that is expected to come in the upcoming hours to days. And now the Padres released a statement saying, "We are deeply saddened by the loss of life at Petco," continuing on to say their thoughts and prayers are with the family. And now I just finished speaking to investigators who tell me that this case remains ongoing at this time, but of course we're still digging for more details at this time. Shep?
Kelvin Henry, thank you. A 19-year-old college student is missing tonight, and just today we learned the person of interest in her disappearance apparently killed himself. Her name is Mia Marcano, a student at Valencia College in Orlando. Mia was last seen on Friday around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they tell us, in the Arden Villa apartments where she lived and worked. The Orange County, Florida Sheriff's Office announcing today they found a maintenance employee, this employee who worked with her, dead, as they put it, for quite some time in his own apartment. Armando Manuel Caballero. They say he had used a master key to enter Marcano's unit minutes before somebody last saw her. Detectives also say Caballero had expressed a romantic interest in Marcano, but was repeatedly rebuffed. Officials say they're continuing to search for her, and her family is pleading to the public to find help, as they put it, help find their princess. Authorities say Marcano was last seen wearing a red shirt, jeans, and a black hoodie. The manhunt for Gabby Petito's boyfriend, Brian Laundrie, now in its 2nd week, and today the FBI said it's scaling back and targeting based on intelligence. Search teams had been scouring a swampy 25,000-acre nature reserve for more than a week now. So far, they haven't reported finding anything. Police say they hope the water levels will go down in areas that are really hard for them to access right now. The FBI yesterday also requested some of Brian's personal items to help them with DNA matching of some sort. The family attorney says Brian Laundrie's parents provided them. And then today, a brand new statement. The Laundrie families, through their attorney, said his parents do not know where he is and that they hope the FBI can locate him. They also emphasized that speculation by the public and some in the press that the parents assisted Brian in leaving his home or in avoiding arrest on a warrant that was issued after Brian had already been missing for several days is just wrong. Gabby Petito's family announced they will hold a press conference tomorrow, 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern. Gabby Petito's funeral was yesterday. Hundreds of mourners, including firefighters and first responders, gathered on Long Island, New York, to pay respects. A chain-link fence across the street acted as a memorial. It's adorned with flowers, cards, and messages, including "Forever in Our Hearts" and "She Touched the World."
Gabby is the most amazing person I've ever met. So when you leave here today, be inspired by what she brought to the table. Because the entire planet knows this woman's name now.
Her father there, Joe Petito, saying he couldn't be a prouder father. And her stepfather recounting how Gabby helped teach him to love life and to give love to all. He told us it's okay to mourn Gabby, to feel sorrow and pain, but he wants instead to celebrate her and remember the memories they shared. Gabby Petito was but 22 years old. An Amtrak train from Chicago to Seattle off the tracks. 3 people killed. New details today on the train's speed and the track condition as investigators try to figure out what went wrong. A river of fire destroys a church. Streams of lava shooting into the sky. Now people in the area are warned, evacuate or lock down.
You got to take a listen to this. It's Squawk Pod.
That's right. CNBC's flagship business news show is a podcast, Squawk Pod.
This is CNBC Control 2? It is not just the show, folks.
It might be even better because it's only audio.
Join me, Katie Kramer, as I take you inside the Squawk Box control room and beyond the headlines of our TV broadcast with Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin every weekday.
Roll Alpha.
Subscribe to Squawk Pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Amtrak train that derailed and killed 3 people in rural Montana on Saturday was going just under the speed limit of 79 miles an hour. That from the NTSB today. Federal investigators say that train derailed right before a switch in the line on a stretch of track that had been inspected just 2 days before the crash. A switch is where one of the tracks splits into 2. The train was headed from Chicago to Seattle. The cause still under investigation. But those doing that investigation say the track had a gradual curve, not a sharp one. They say they're reviewing video from the train and watching it frame by frame to see exactly what the engineer saw or did not see. The United States had its biggest spike in murders ever recorded last year. That's according to a new report out from the FBI. It compiles crime stats from thousands of law enforcement agencies across the nation. In 2020, there were more than 21,000 homicides in the U.S. That's nearly 5,000 more than in 2019. Despite the dramatic increase, the homicide rate was still below the record highs of the early 1990s. The killers used guns in 77% of the nation's murders. That number's been inching up over the years, but this is the first time that it breaks the 75% mark. The volcano eruption still causing chaos on Spain's Canary Islands. This video shows a stream of lava destroying a church. Would you look at that? That's on the island of La Palma. The lava swallowing up more than 500 homes, forcing nearly 7,000 people to evacuate. The lava itself is slowing down, they tell us, but scientists warn it could create clouds of toxic gases and cause explosions if the 2,200-degree molten rock spills into the ocean water. Local officials urging residents who live near the water to stay home and wear protective masks. The eruption started last week after several small earthquakes. Scientists warn it could last as long as 3 months. After 16 years, Germany is set to have a brand new leader. Social Democrats narrowly defeated Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservative Party in the country's election. The leader of the Social Dems is a man named Olaf Scholz. He's one of the leading contenders to become the next chancellor of Germany. Scholz vowing to halt man-made climate change. But first, he needs to cobble together a coalition and form a new government, which could take weeks. Merkel is the longest-serving leader in all of the European Union. She did not run for re-election, despite the fact that she has an approval rating of nearly 80%. Merkel first became chancellor back in 2005 when President George W. Bush was still in office. Ford making a really big bet on electric vehicles. Brand new factories, a focus on electric trucks. Phil LeBeau breaks down all the brand new details that just went public. We ride along with a new emergency response team in San Francisco dedicated to just one thing: overdoses, why people are shelling out money for a drug that kills more people than COVID, and a massive infrastructure bill avoiding a government shutdown, the debt limit. It's a juggling act on Capitol Hill in a pivotal week. But can lawmakers keep all the balls in the air? That's next as we approach the bottom of the hour and the top of the news on a Monday night from CNBC. Major news from Ford in this hour in its push to go all out on electric. The company just announced it's building 4 new plants in the United States and hiring almost 11,000 new workers. Ford officials say 3 plants will build new batteries, the 4th assembling the all-electric F-Series truck. And the price tag, look at that, more than $11 billion. Ford's putting up $7 billion, the Korean battery partner paying the rest. Now, the factories are to be located outside Memphis and outside Louisville. Great news for those cities. Phil LeBeau with us. Ford betting big on EVs with this investment, really big.
Huge investment, Shep. It is the single largest investment. It just announced at one time that Ford has ever made. I mean, they have said we are going all electric. And think of it this way. They want to have 40% of all of their vehicle sales be electric vehicles by the end of this decade. So they've got to put the pieces in place in order to build those batteries as well as those vehicles and really ramp up sales between 26 and 29 later on this decade.
Hey, why Tennessee and West Tennessee specifically and Kentucky for these plants? Why not Michigan?
Well, you want to spread out your footprint. If you're Ford, they've got plants in a number of states. They also have a number of plants already in Michigan. And in the case of Louisville, they have 2 truck plants there. So it makes sense to put a couple of battery plants there that will supply for those plants. And outside of Memphis, that's a green sheet location, Shep. They are going to be doing it from the ground up, designing it so that there's no pollution at all. They don't use water, that they are making this carbon neutral. It's a big goal that they have set for that location.
Wow, incredible news. Phil, thanks so much. TikTok just hit a major milestone, and that's what's stopping CNBC on the money. 1 billion people use TikTok per month. That's according to a blog post on the video app's website. That number increased from nearly 700 million monthly active global users just last summer. Even so, there are now regulatory threats against the company. Former President Trump famously tried to block TikTok, and India banned TikTok just last year. Beyond Meat chicken tenders coming to select Walmart stores next month. It comes after the plant-based chicken launched in 400 restaurants nationwide this summer. The fake chicken tenders, $5 a pack. Beyond Meat reports availability will expand later this year. And Skittles bringing back its original rainbow. They replaced the iconic lime flavor with green apple 8 years ago. Now, lime is coming back, they say permanently. The new Skittles packages with the lime instead of the green apple set to begin arriving on shelves in October. News you can use. On Wall Street, the Dow up 71, S&P down 12, the NASDAQ down 78. I'm Shepard Smith on CNBC. It's the bottom of the hour. Time for the top of the news. Facebook pausing its work on Instagram for kids. The reasons behind the move and why the company still believes the platform is needed. Supply chain pain. Cargo ship backups getting worse off both coasts. The impact being felt nationwide. And a make or break week on Capitol Hill. President Biden's agenda is no doubt on the line with some crucial votes in just the days to come. Democrats are looking to pass an infrastructure bill and move forward with a massive $3.5 trillion spending package, while also preventing a government shutdown. As expected, just a very short time ago, Senate Republicans blocked a House bill to fund the government until at least December the 3rd. They'll try again. Congress has until Friday to approve the funding, or it's lights out. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell on the top story at the bottom of the hour. Leanne, the congressional tradition of fighting over government funding is alive and well.
It sure is, Shepard. And the Senate just voted on a government funding bill just moments ago, and Senate Republicans blocked that vote. The reason is because attached to it was a suspension of the debt limit. Republicans have said that they will provide no votes to any government funding bill as long as that suspension of the debt limit is included. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell does say, though, that he would vote to fund the government as long as it was what we call a clean government funding bill, no strings attached, no suspension of the debt limit. So Democrats now have to come up with a plan B. We don't know what that plan is just yet, but they only have 3 days to figure it out as government funding runs out at midnight on September 30th. Now, all of this is happening while Democrats are also haggling over how to pass this bipartisan infrastructure bill and this multi-trillion-dollar mega bill of human infrastructure projects. Now, that is extremely complicated. The House wants to pass the bipartisan bill as early as this week. Progressives are saying they won't vote for it unless they also get a vote on this major mega bill. Well, Senator Joe Manchin keeps on complicating these efforts. He told me earlier today that he's not yet on board, and one of the reasons he's concerned about an entitlement mentality. Let's listen.
I'm concerned about basically a society moving towards more of an entitlement mentality versus a rewarding mentality. That's it in a nutshell.
And Joe Manchin is a critical player here. Even though the House is haggling over this, they need the support of all 50 Democrats in the Senate, and they don't have that without Senator Manchin. Shepard.
Maybe the most powerful guy in the district. Thank you. Yep. The nation's oil infrastructure also becoming increasingly vulnerable to extreme weather linked to climate change. Hurricane Ida, a perfect example. It triggered the most oil spills in the Gulf of Mexico of any weather event since the federal government started using satellites to track them 10 years ago. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration reports an unprecedented 55 spills in 2 weeks after Ida, compared to just 5 in the 2 weeks before the hurricane. The leaks sprung from old or abandoned oil pipelines and offshore drilling platforms, they tell us, leaving trails of slick in the ocean. Almost half of pipeline segments and 3/4 of all platforms are inactive or abandoned, according to federal data. America's drug epidemic has only gotten worse since COVID started spreading across the land. Drug overdose deaths increased nearly 30% last year to more than 93,000. The CDC reports it's the largest single-year spike on record, and data shows the sharpest increases in deaths occurred in the South and the West. In San Francisco, the mayor says synthetic opioids, including fentanyl, are driving up the number of overdoses. NBC's Jacob Selberoff got a rare access to a response team working to reverse this deadly trend.
I'm riding with the San Francisco Fire Department right now, part of a new unit that responds to opioid overdose calls. There were more opioid overdoses in San Francisco than COVID deaths in 2020. This unit's meant not just to save lives, but to stop this from happening again. The city of San Francisco has been hit so hard by overdose deaths it now has a new unit devoted to harm reduction. I rode along with Captain Mike Mason of the fire department and Kevin Lagore, a nurse practitioner.
This is our guy.
We arrived at this stop just after a man had been revived with Narcan, the antidote to fentanyl. We've only been out here with the fire department for about 10 minutes. This is already the second call out of the day for overdose. They say it goes nonstop.
Medic one.
The calls came one after another after another. And for the men and women who do this work, the toll can be exacting. It must wear on you.
We've had some very long, very sad days.
There's more inequality here in California than anywhere else in the United States. If that wasn't the case here, do you think it'd be easier to get people away from using drugs like this?
The drug overdose epidemic in San Francisco does mirror intense social and health inequalities. 5% of San Franciscans' populations are black individuals, yet 25% of overdose deaths include people of color. Less than 1% of San Franciscans' people are individuals here, are unhoused, but they comprise approximately 30% of overdose deaths.
How often I spoke with a homeless married couple outside a clinic who said they were fentanyl users. When did you guys first see the fentanyl in California?
Since last summer.
How cheap is it?
Way cheap.
$5 will take care of us for a whole day.
For a day, $5. It's like a quarter of the cost of heroin.
We're in the Haight-Ashbury.
University of California Medical School professor Dan Ciccarone says the fact that drugs are cheaper, more plentiful, and deadlier than ever means America should rethink drug policies.
We would love to know that we can put the fentanyl genie back in the bottle, right? It's probably not going to happen.
What about policies that have nothing to do with drugs explicitly, but the underlying conditions?
What are we going to do that's outrageously new, creative, bold, in terms of addressing those root issues, the issues of inequality in America, the roots of racism, of desperation?
This is in the Fillmore district. Back on the road with the response unit, our last call of the day was also for someone just revived by Narcan. He said he was a veteran and asked to be transported to a nearby veterans hospital.
Yeah, it's a clinic.
Afterward, I spoke with Starnisha Bryant, a healthcare worker in a nearby office, who revived him.
They said he's ODing, so I took my Narcan off, stuck it up his nose.
They're going to follow up on the work you did and try to get him into a treatment program.
Hopefully it works, but you gotta want it.
You got to want it.
You gotta want it.
What do you see? Do people want it these days?
No.
Why do you think things are as bad as they are today?
It's easy to get it. You can come to any corner and get it.
Incredible. Jacob Soboroff with us live now. Why is it so easy to get it?
Well, because it's so easy to make, Shep. Unlike heroin, it's not made from a poppy plant. And because that poppy plant was very difficult to cultivate, now it's made in a lab. And now that it's made in this lab, ultimately, it's going to be spread all throughout Southern California, all throughout the nation, all throughout Northern California. And that's why they're focused on inequality, not necessarily stopping people from dying.
Great report. Jacob Soboroff, live in the back hall. Thank you. Facebook is pumping the brakes on its Instagram for kids. But the company's not giving up on it entirely. Tonight, how the head of Instagram is explaining what he calls a pause. There's a new trader in town, and he's making his way down Wall Street in a hamster wheel. The big-time predictions from the one they call Mr. Gox. So Facebook says it's not going to be scrapping its plan to develop an Instagram for kids, but the company is pausing the project. In an interview this morning on the Today Show, the head of Instagram made the announcement while defending the idea.
I firmly believe that it's a good thing to build a version of Instagram that's designed to be safe for tweens. But we want to take the time to talk to parents and researchers and safety experts and get to more consensus about how to move forward.
Well, this comes 2 weeks after the Wall Street Journal reported that internal research, Facebook's own research, found that Instagram is toxic for teenage girls. Instagram, of course, has been under fire for its plan to make a platform for kids under 13 ever since the idea became public. Attorneys general from 44 states have asked the company, please don't do this. But instead of scrapping the whole thing, they're playing a hang on. They say they're working on new features to make the current and future platform better. Here's CNBC's Christina Partsinevelos.
Facebook, the parent company of Instagram, is on the defensive, saying young teens already find a way around the app's age restriction, but now plans to offer better parental controls.
The idea would be that they could see what their kids are doing. Okay. They could manage how much time their kids spend on the app, and they could possibly approve things like who they can message and who they can follow.
The pause comes after an explosive Wall Street Journal report showed that Facebook found 1 in 5 teens say Instagram makes them feel worse about themselves. Facebook disagrees and says the journal's reporting mischaracterized the company's findings and that body image was the only area where teen girls felt worse after using the app. Lawmakers like Senator Ed Markey say a pause is insufficient and Facebook must completely abandon this project, while experts say that's unlikely.
It's hard to believe that they will abandon Instagram for kids entirely, but I do think that it's an opportunity for them to change it and change the way that they had envisioned it, just to make sure that the reputation that they have in front of the world becomes more positive.
Change is coming. Users can take advantage of new features like a reporting option for eating disorder-related content, the removal of all graphic content related to suicide, prompts or nudges to point people towards uplifting content, and a restrict button to protect users from bullying. Despite the uproar, Facebook executives believe Instagram for tweens is safe and pointed out other popular social media apps like YouTube and TikTok already have versions designed for under 13-year-olds. Facebook will face the wrath of lawmakers this Thursday as it testifies before a Senate subcommittee about its platform's effects on mental health. Shep?
Christina, thanks. One of the biggest unions in Hollywood could be going on strike, and if they do, it'll affect you. The International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, or IATSE, reports it hasn't been able to reach an agreement on its latest contract. The union demanding higher wages, longer rest periods, and residuals for content aired on streaming services. Studios say their demands are just too much. In a statement to the LA Times, the trade association that negotiates these deals said it had listened and addressed many of the union's demands. Up to 60,000 union members could be asked to vote for a strike as early as Friday, with results by next Monday. The vote needs a 75% majority. And if the union votes in favor of a strike, it doesn't mean a walkout is inevitable, but it does put the power in the hands of the union leaders as they threaten to close down productions. Hollywood crews haven't staged a major strike since World War II. Now, what would it mean? A strike would impact a number of unionized film and TV projects on the West Coast and nationally at a moment when production in Los Angeles and New York has finally rebounded to pre-pandemic levels. It's hard work, that. Most of us can relate. But what about soft work? That's a thing. Soft work involves sharing gossip, rubbing in the fact that the Yankees swept the Red Sox, which, guilty, and sharing parenting tips, all soft work, the kind of thing that brings us together, That's according to Derek Thompson at The Atlantic. All things that are harder to do from home, but with some employees and employers reporting increased productivity since they started working from home, how valuable is this soft work? The Atlantic's Derek Thompson is with us. Is this really part of an argument for people to just get back to the office?
Yeah, I do. I think managers are really interested in getting people back to the office precisely because a lot of the job of a manager is essentially soft work. You are networking, you are gossiping, you are getting the temperature of the office. But I think what we've learned from the last 18, 19 months is that a lot of people, especially a lot of white collar workers, knowledge workers, have been essentially as productive or more productive at home without commuting. That's because I think hard work can be equivalently done in the office and out of the office. What we don't know is how important soft work is to the future of this kind of knowledge economy.
The sort of collaboration that happens when you're wandering around the office, getting a candy bar or talking over coffee.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Or as I would as well, mocking my boss because he's been doing so well with Stanton's late inning. This kind of conversation is useful. You could imagine a way in which, it's nice to talk to friends, build psychological safety so that you can, share brave ideas later. So that, they won't mock you for their crazy ideas and you won't mock them for their crazy ideas. This kind of psychological safety is a big part of creativity research, but it's possible that it's not like the most essential thing to knowledge economy work. That still might just be hard work. Researching, writing, Excel, PowerPoints, that still might be the stuff of productivity.
Maybe. But when people start talking like that, when you're trying to work like he just did, that's what I hate. And I like being here. It's great to see you, and I love The Atlantic. Thank you for your time. What if I told you there's a way to beat the NASDAQ, beat the S&P 500, and beat Warren Buffett? And all you have to do is follow this hamster's advice. They call him Mr. Gox. He's been trading crypto since early June, and he's not bad at it. His portfolio here is up 20% since he started, according to his Twitter account anyway. We don't know who Mr. Gox, human handler, is, but we do know where he makes his trades. The Gox box. It's rigged to automatically trade crypto. First, Mr. Gox takes a run on the intention wheel, which lets him pick a crypto. Then he can enter either of the tunnels, the decision tunnels, buy or sell. The recent crypto sell-off has been tough on Mr. Gox, bottom line. But according to data compiled by the crypto news outlet Portos, Mr. Gox is still beating just about everybody during the time for which we have data. Here's a live look at the market's furriest trader, probably right now thinking of his next big move. Buy now, pay later. Sort of a modern day layaway, right? But like most things, the devil may be in the details. And supply chain pain, why your holiday shopping may be frustrating at best. Ships stuck at sea with your precious packages on board. Small companies feeling the pinch. And the major players now taking matters into their own hands. Your holiday shopping plans may need some big changes because the largest ports in America are facing a major cargo crisis. Dozens of container ships still stuck off the coast of New York and Los Angeles. The logjam causing shipping delays and supply shortages for businesses large and small. Here's NBC's Tom Costello.
Off the coast of Los Angeles, a truly stunning sight. Nearly 60 container ships in the water, anchored all the way to the horizon. Precious goods and supplies sitting idle for days. And off the East Coast, data shows nearly 20 ships waiting to get into New York City.
When the world's manufacturers came back online, there was a surge in products that were ordered and just a finite amount of capacity of ships, of trucks, of warehouses. The infrastructure that exists can't handle the volume.
The cargo bottleneck is just the latest hiccup in an already struggling supply chain, with labor shortages in trucking and warehouses causing unprecedented delays. Big retailers like Costco and Home Depot have started contracting their own ships to bring goods to U.S. shores, with Costco recently announcing it will be putting limits on key items for consumers, like toilet paper, bottled water, and cleaning supplies. Also at risk for many retailers, popular holiday gift items like TVs, toys, and sneakers. Small business owners are also feeling the pinch, like Steve Siegel, whose furniture inventory is consistently stuck at sea.
Once the ship gets unloaded, it has to go to the distributor. And once it gets there, do they have anybody to unload the truck, the container? Probably not.
Alex Willen sells all-natural dog treat mix. Right now, everything from his silicone treat molds to the jars for his popsicle mix are getting stuck in transit.
Maybe 4 or 5 months ago would have taken 45 days to get here. Now, could be 60, could be as much as 90.
With no end to the delays in sight, Alex is now ordering all of his holiday inventory as early as possible.
Certainly have patience with small businesses. Things are challenging. Everything is slowed down, and we're all doing the best we can.
Experts say consumers should make sure they're stocked up on all the essentials at home and make a plan to order holiday gifts as soon as possible.
So if you had something in mind this holiday season for a family member, a child, go ahead and secure that now. Do not wait. Chances are that it won't be available in the store after Black Friday.
For the news, I'm Tom Costello.
So thanks. And if you're getting your holiday shopping done early, you may see a buy now, pay later option when you check out. It's a program that lets people pay for their items over several installments. But beware. While many options may be interest-free, your credit score could still take a hit if you miss a payment. Here's CNBC's Courtney Reagan.
VJ Cox works hard at his job as a banker in Pittsburgh. He has bills to pay, but also likes to treat himself to a first-class plane ticket or a new outfit. Buy now, pay later options help him manage both.
When you have something like Affirm, Afterpay, Klarna, it just makes it easier to where you can break down the price to where you're not using your entire, say, paycheck or your savings all at once.
Some buy now, pay later plans are interest and fee free if the balance is paid off on time in 4 to 6 equal installments. Retail consultant Hemal Nagarshith says some others may charge interest but allow consumers to spend a larger amount with payments over a longer period of time.
Many consumers might be familiar with paying other types of loans over time, whether it's a car or a house. So similar, what you do is you define a set of payments and then you pay down on that schedule versus a credit card where, the actual payment may vary from month to month.
Buy now, pay later plans are typically aimed at Gen Z or millennial shoppers who either don't have or choose not to use a credit card. Retailers like Rue21, Dior.com, and Macy's are using them, and for good reason. Websites offering these plans were able to convert a browser to a buyer 6% of the time versus 4% for sites that don't. If it seems too good to be true, it can be if you're not careful.
Sometimes you have to be careful because you may get late fees or other fees assessed if you don't make your payments sometimes.
VJ makes sure he is comfortable with the payment terms before checking out.
I'm proud to say that I've never missed a payment. I've never paid late. I would think somebody's insane for maybe trying to buy like that $3,000 Louis Vuitton and putting it on that program, because how crazy interest would be on something like that.
Buy now, pay later only makes up about 2.5% of all global payments, but it's growing, expected to double by 2023. Amazon, Walmart, Nordstrom, Peloton, many more, they're offering these installment payment options. Shep?
Courtney, it seems kind of risky if you're not careful, buying things you can't afford.
Absolutely. It is a form of credit, so consumers still need to be careful not to buy more than they can pay off on time. And a new study by Credit Karma did show a third of U.S. consumers who used buy now, pay later services have fallen behind on at least one payment. Though that's lower than 9 months ago, 72% of those saw their credit score fall. Afterpay's co-CEO Nick Molnar, though, said today on CNBC that if one Afterpay payment is late, the account is paused. Nothing else can be bought on the service until it's paid, which, of course, is not how credit cards work. Jeff?
Courtney Reagan, thank you. 45 seconds on a race to the finish. The jury today convicted R. Kelly on all counts in his sex trafficking and racketeering trial, sentencing next May. Senate Republicans just blocked a bill to fund the government and prevent a shutdown. Congress has until Friday to come up with a deal or it's lights out. And tomorrow, the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and top military leaders to testify before the Senate on that chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. And now you know the news of this Monday, September 27th, 2021. I'm Shepard Smith. Follow us on IG and Twitter at The News on CNBC. And listen to the News podcast on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. For now, though, you must stay tuned. A test will be had later. The Shark Tank's next. You've been listening to the CNBC podcast, The News with Shepard Smith. You can always catch us live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on CNBC.
Worldwide Exchange is now a podcast. I'm Brian Sullivan. Join me as we hit the biggest money stories from around the world, breaking down the risks and rewards of global trade, the news you need to know with real-world actionable advice, and even a little fun and unique content you won't get anywhere else, like the most random but interesting thing you'll hear all day. Subscribe to the Worldwide Exchange podcast today.